Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Secretary, for your testimony today. Secretary Estevez, in 2020, the Trump administration moved responsibility over exports of firearms, including assault weapons, from the State Department to Commerce. And this has made it significantly easier to export these firearms. There are fewer registration requirements, less oversight, more exemptions, and significantly curtailed congressional review. It was essentially a giveaway to gun manufacturers a few years ago, and it seems to have worked. Small arms exports are up at least 30% over the last 16 months. And the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms estimates that over 70% of firearms seized by Mexican law enforcement can be traced back to the United States. A large proportion of these weapons were legally exported from the United States to these countries and then fell into the hands of criminals. US-made guns are killing people, of course, not just in my home state of Texas, but places like Connecticut, Florida, Illinois, but also in other countries like Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And by some estimates, US-manufactured guns kill more people in Mexico than in the United States. I'm glad that in 2020, then candidate Joe Biden made a campaign pledge to return jurisdiction over these exports to the State Department. So Secretary Estevez, just last week, President Biden described assault weapons as, quote, weapons of war, and has said that they should not belong and they don't belong on our streets. And I agree with that. Do you believe that assault weapons belong on the streets of Mexico or Honduras or El Salvador or Guatemala?
I'm going to say I do not, except in the hands of the appropriate authorities in those nations.
And so can you give us an update on essentially this issue and how y'all are combating this?
Sure. First, the movement of the authority for oversight of exports of firearms from state to Commerce actually did two things. It put an interagency process around that licensing, which includes states. So state still has a strong say in approving licenses of exports to any nation. It also put an enforcement arm so that we can enforce the export controls that I used, for all exports, but also for guns. So my enforcement arm has a focus on that. And of course, human rights abuses are part of our normal licensing process, especially so for guns. So actually, I think that we've increased our capability to review exports of all sorts of guns going to foreign entities.
You don't disagree that the numbers are up, that the problem has gotten worse, do you?
It's hard for me to parse that. It's not all assault weapons, let's be clear. It's also, I'm exporting weapons to Ukraine right now, which increases numbers for the reasons that you would expect. We're giving Ukraine the weapons they need.
Yeah, but I'm addressing Mexico and Latin American countries. Yeah. All of us know the situation in Ukraine.
Yeah. We would export guns to Mexican authorities as part of our foreign policy.
Okay, I'll follow up with you guys on that, but let me ask another question because I'm running low on time. I understand that this week the BIS published a rule on congressional notification of these sales, and this is entirely inadequate. You say you'll inform Congress of sales. If y'all said you would inform Congress of sales above $4 million, which is higher than the State Department's threshold of $1 million, and you don't acknowledge Congress's prerogative to block sales as we can with the State Department. So my question is, why is the Commerce Department trying to evade congressional oversight on these weapons exports with this higher threshold and reducing the ability of this very committee to review these sales?
As part of that, we've approved that, we're going to give the licensing information to this committee. The higher number is based on our licensing capabilities inside the Department of Commerce. It's not trying to evade oversight, Congressman.
Secretary, so far, from what I can tell, your actions have made it easier for dangerous people to get dangerous weapons in their hands in other countries where this is an incredible problem. With that, Chairman, I yield back.